Hi, I'm Paul Camillos. Join me and my co-host Jacinta Gavin for Series 4 of Shooting the Breeze. We cover women's hoops and women in hoops. We talk to inspiring players, amazing coaches, and the legends behind the scenes and at the grassroots of the game. During this series, we'll be covering the FIBA Women's World Cup, where the 12 best teams on the planet are coming to Sydney. And of course, we'll be covering Australia's longest-running women's professional sporting league, the WNBL, in its 43rd season. Hit that subscribe button, like and review so we can get more hoops content to you.
So being able to have this platform, especially in sport, when we typically hear it's about a perpetrator and what they've done, it's now going to hopefully shed some light on DV victims, support networks, the AFP, DVCES in Canberra, ways to recognise DV. How can we help contributing towards charities? How can we change that narrative?
In this episode, Alex Bunton joins us for probably one of our most raw and thought-provoking podcasts, as she allows us into her lived experience as a domestic violence, or DV, victim survivor. In their final home game, the UC Caps will sponsor the DV Awareness Round. Bunts generously shares her experience with the hope that as we talk more openly about this devastating issue, more common than people may realise, we can remove the stigma and understand what DV looks like for victims so that people can be more alert and know how to help and respond. We're so grateful to Bunts for her bravery in sharing this, as she reminds us that DV does not discriminate. It's complex and it happens under a veil of secrecy. So, she helps us by lifting the lid on DV. If you or someone you know needs advice or help, contact 1-800-737-732 or 1-800-RESPECT.
Welcome to Shooting the Breeze. Joining me, as always, my co-host Jacinta Gavin, and we're being joined by Alex Bunton today. Bunts, good to see you again. How are you doing?
Thanks, guys. I've been waiting to be back on here, so I'm glad that this is my moment again.
That's always a lovely thing to hear when we start a new episode, that someone was eager to come back.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, the amount of stories that you guys cover and the people that you get to talk to, it's actually... it's a privilege to be able to have someone so invested and interested in our lives and the things that we do, and it's not just sport. So, yeah, I love it.
Oh, great. Thanks, Bunts.
Thanks, Bunts. It's really great.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so this week is the last game for the season for the Caps, and it's also the DV round. And, you guys have had a pretty tough season pretty much all the way through. A lot of injuries, it's not unfair to say that your team has been decimated across the season. But you guys have not quit. You've just stuck it out and put in some amazing performances. How do you feel as a member of that team, looking at the performances across the season, given everything that's gone wrong?
Yeah, and being part of the leadership group too, you kind of feel like you have that, mum feeling. I know Be Smart calls herself mum, but I also have that too because I care so much about the team and as people, but as basketball players as well. We've handled everything that has been thrown at us, injury wise, some really close games, some tough losses, close losses, big losses, but then amazing wins. And yeah, whatever's been thrown at us, we've just handled it with such grace, but also courage and strength. And that's mentally and physically, because some people have had to really put their bodies on the line. But I think we've all been in it together mentally and emotionally just to stick together and, handling adversity, sometimes, it's always attached to like a negative thing, something bad's happened and like, we've handled it and we've come out the other end. But this is like, we've just handled whatever challenge with, like, we haven't taken anything negatively, like we kind of laugh some things off, we let it slide, but we still have the same mission and we still have the same goal, is to always get better, regardless of a result, and to always put in the hard work and always show up. And yeah, to have that carried through by every single person on the team and coaching and, even the Caps like family, it's pretty darn cool.
It has been. And I got to say, one thing that's really impressed me is the way some of the younger players have just stepped up and really put in, I think some of them have put in performances of careers.
Yeah, and that's it. And you don't, at the start of the season, people were like commenting about age. We're young. This is the young team, and Caps are fresh, and we're young, and we've got a rookie coach kind of thing. And it's as the season's gone on, the trajectory that we've gone in, like you forget about that label and you forget about the youngsters because they're just ballers. Like they ball out and they just give it their all, and it's really cool to see and grow with them as well. Like being older for me, and I know Be Smart, where not so much having to keep up with them, but we're just having to we get to follow them, we get to be with them, and we get to kind of have our input, but we also get to feel young too. Not that I'm old, okay, but it, just being surrounded by younger girls, we just get to like live through them, I guess, and they do bring that joy and that spark that is needed in like harder times. So it's been really cool to watch some of them grow.
I think, and not so much because, like you said, it's not that the likes of yourself and Be Smart are old, but you've been playing a lot longer. So yeah. You've at different levels, at different teams, like you have a lot more playing experience under your belt. And it does sound like when you have those really green young rookies coming into the fold, it can give you a little bit more of a spark and maybe a bit of a reminder as to why you do what you do every day.
Yeah, and just like the joy and the energy that they bring too. Like Jade Melbourne's always smiling, and so it's like it's infectious. And yeah, you don't want to, as you get older as a basketballer and just in life in general, that you don't want to be left behind. You don't want to like be too old school. So, you kind of got to mold into your environment. And this is like the perfect example of still being able to bring our experiences. As you said, like we've played more, we've played in different teams, we've played all over the world, but it's, infectious, the energy that they give off. It's like my daughter Opal, you have to keep up with her.
Keep up or get out of the way.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so the DV round, this is something that's quite close to your heart. Tell us a little bit about how the idea of doing a DV round came about.
Well, I'm a DV victim survivor, and for the listeners who don't know what DV, it's domestic violence, and that's something that I had to go through once I retired back in 2019, and it was a very hard time in my life, and obviously coming back to basketball shone that light on an opportunity when the WNBL gave us the player initiative round. It was to relate to someone or something personal for one of the players, and yeah, my story goes back for a couple of years where I was in that relationship, and it was something that I had to overcome, but also realize that I could shed a lot of light on and a lot of positivity moving forward. So yeah, domestic violence is close to home for me in positive and negative ways, but it's a privilege to be able to change that narrative for it.
And it's pretty obvious, as you said, having a lived experience of being a survivor of domestic violence, how important it is for there to be a DV round, and especially for the UC Caps to recognise that as an important initiative to have as their play initiative round. So what are some of the main goals for this round in your eyes?
The massive thing that I keep saying is to create awareness through conversation, because conversation can be back and forth between people. Some people can just listen into a conversation and take something away from it. It can be continued, and to raise the awareness that domestic violence doesn't discriminate against anyone. And I take my personal experience and look at where I am, and I'm, profiled as a professional athlete, and that doesn't discriminate. And it, I had to go through it, and it's an awareness time to be able to include the community, include others around who may not be a victim or a victim survivor, but to be able to encourage them to change the stigma and to change what they might think or might know what domestic violence is, and to be able to dig a little deeper in the not so much the harsh statistics and the harsh, things that we see on TV or the news or, from perpetrators, but to be able to know how to help. And it was really a positive message from when we had the team, like my girls, be able to be educated by a family violence officer. And it was really beautiful to see some people who had really no idea about domestic violence be able to ask questions and go, how can we help? And how can we recognize the signs of someone being in a DV relationship? What are the layers of domestic violence? And it's not just physical. There's so many different, contributors to being abused or in a DV relationship. And to have that really pinpointed that it's not just, respectfully for the victims and about the perpetrators, it's about people and how we can help and how we can change the narrative that has been told about domestic violence. So being able to have this platform, especially in sport, when we typically hear it's about a perpetrator and what they've done, it's now going to hopefully shed some light on DV victims, support networks, the AFP, DVCES in Canberra, ways to recognise DV. How can we help contributing towards charities? How can we change that narrative? And so this round is hopefully going to tell a different story for people.
And you've spoken a lot in the past about, and even, just now you touched on how you want to bring more attention to the stigma around domestic violence and being a victim of or survivor of domestic violence. And we'll get into that a bit more in a sec. But before we move on, I just want to touch on, or ask you to touch on, what are some of the other methods, I guess, of domestic violence other than, physical assault that people need to be more aware of?
Yeah, and as I said, there's multi-layers to it. And a lot of the, when you hear the word violence, majority of the time people think physical violence. But with DV, there's mental and emotional abuse, there's financial. And I think they're the ones that aren't really spoken about, and they're the ones that you don't really hear about, because it just doesn't have to be physical abuse for it to still be abuse. And it doesn't have to be physical abuse to still be labelled as domestic violence. So to have a bit more of that understanding that it goes deeper, and when you break it down, there comes those layers where it can affect everyone differently. And that's part of that changing that stigma, where we think it's just a physical thing, or we think it's, it's in the courts, or it's, someone's got into a fight, or someone's just been yelling at each other, or it's just a domestic, and really like that demographic has been attached to it. It's not just the physical part that's part of domestic violence. The behavioural thing, the control and the coercive control, and the things that are really unsaid that really need to be brought to the front to have people understand.
Because, if we, if you have a friend, it doesn't have to be a girlfriend, it can also be a male friend as well, because obviously, statistically, women are more likely to be victims of domestic violence than men, but that's not saying it doesn't happen to men too, whether it's in heterosexual or same-sex relationships as well. But what are some of the telltale signs that we can do as friends or teammates or colleagues that we can perhaps look out for if we feel like someone's a victim of DV?
I think some of the early signs are someone who is really retreating back on their life or retreating on themselves. Losing contact with people or not being as outgoing. Their personality can change. And I want to make it a clear message that this can not just be about DV as well. You should always check in with people. You should always check up on people. But there are common signs across, mental health and DV and all these other things that are quite similar. So, going back in on yourself, or someone gets a little bit paranoid, always checking their phone. When we had Brandon from the family violence unit, he explained if people start to cover up, parts of their body that they usually don't cover up, and it's really hot weather, like it may sound, a bit over the top, but like there are very realistic signs that people actually have to go through, which is really sad. And I think some of the biggest things is really when someone starts to detach from their world, someone doesn't involve you. And I know personally I shut off from, some of my best friends and my family. I stopped telling them things, and I stopped wanting to involve them with my life because I was going through a lot with someone else, or I was being in a situation where I couldn't share things and I was fearful to share things. But obviously, it's going to be different for every situation. But those are the common signs of someone who may be struggling just in general or in a relationship that has some sort of control or fear for them.
So going back, as we touched on before, the stigma around being a victim of DV. And like you said, I don't think it's something that is really spoken enough of, or that's probably has a lot of understanding around. So tell us more about the stigma and what victims of DV are typically stigmatized for.
It's not an easy question to answer because it's actually so broad with what I could talk about, but I'll go from like personal experiences. And, when I was going through the early stages of my relationship, I didn't even know it was a DV relationship because my understanding of domestic violence was that physical side, was that I'm only going to see it in the news and I'm only going to, it's male, female, just like yelling at each other kind of thing. It was quite basic, my understanding of DV. But it was also so taboo because there was nothing else out there to really describe unless I was, in a different position now where I've Googled and I've looked at it and I've experienced it and I've heard about it and I've been with police officers and crisis services who explain the depths of it, or share statistics with me. But yeah, the stigma that a lot of people have is really the unknown. And I think the word violence is a massive contributor to just assuming that it's a physical situation, I guess. And with me, when I came out of it and when I've looked back or I've been able to talk about it, majority of the people who haven't been in a domestic violence relationship say exactly the same thing. It's unknown, it's taboo, it's uncomfortable, it's heavy. I don't really want to talk about it. I don't know much. I don't know what I can and can't say. And although most of the time people are trying to be respectful, but a lot of the time it's like they just don't know. Like they just go on what they've seen on the news and that's it. And that stigma goes to like demographics as well. And I'm talking from the most respectful place that I can, but the people who aren't a professional basketballer, the people who aren't CEOs and in the spotlight or wealthy or successful in their own life, when we have the grade of what we've kind of labeled successful and not successful as a society, but the less fortunate people are the ones who are going through a domestic violence relationship. And as I said, I mean that in the most respectful way, but that's what we have, that image in our mind, I'll use it from my personal words, like as a bogan, with like that kind of bogan terminology, like, oh, it's just those bogan kind of, situations, or, they're just yelling at each other, they're just having a fight, or, the people who live out back, whatever, like neighborhood watch can call the police kind of thing. And that's the harsh reality of what people assume.
Yeah, I think typically anything with the word attached violence immediately gets people uncomfortable. And it's exactly what you said before. People get uncomfortable and they don't know what to say, and the fear of saying the wrong thing, or the fear of like wanting to offer help or some kind of soft intervention to provide someone a lifeline in some way, but then knowing, is the person able to recognize that's happening to them, what's happening to them is actually domestic violence? Is it something that's going to fracture your relationship and then potentially not have, a friendship where you can address it again? And because it can also be things like a partner stopping their partner from seeing their friends, checking their phone, monitoring the bank account, all of those kinds of things that is so restrictive and controlling on another person's life. And not, like you said, not knowing what to say, when to say it, is such a grey area, I think, for a lot of people too.
Yeah, and you can understand. And I, coming out of this, and I never put an expectation on people to understand where I come from, what I've been through. But there is now that that hunger in me to want to help and share that with people, to make them understand, to help them understand, because it's just a heavy topic, I think, for a lot of people, but that doesn't mean it can't have positives with it. They can't be changed, and if we don't talk about it, then how is there going to be change? And you don't have to fully understand or, feel the depth of a situation, but if you can be a voice, if you can be, a helping hand in any way, you're doing the right thing and you're helping victims and potentially perpetrators, not commit DV. And to really know that if it's in the spotlight and there's multiple people out there watching and helping and trying to do the right thing, then, change is inevitable.
And I feel like domestic violence, like I'd love to get your opinion on this too, Bunts. Like domestic violence, I feel like has been such a long-seated issue and almost like a culturally ingrained issue where for a very long time it was so accepted. You even look at some pop culture references of movies and TV shows set in a period of time and you see these, in like the 40s, 50s, especially post-World War, I suppose, as well, where you get this couple depicted where there's a DV in the relationship and that's just how it is and that's just accepted and people get along with it and it just weirdly becomes normalized. But then also what became normalized is that the victims of domestic violence were just silenced.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's just been such an ingrained thing in our culture. And now it's great that we have advocates like yourself and initiatives like this round where we can finally say, actually, that's not all right. Like, and that's not normal behavior.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that because I was talking today about, how I felt being, what my mindset was and where I was when I was in that DV relationship. And I did feel silenced because I didn't know what was right or wrong. And I say I was a independent, strong, young woman, and I still ended up in a position where I second-guessed myself because I wasn't 100% sure, what love should really be. How should someone treat you if they're still saying sorry and, making up for their mistakes? And because we're taught, you should make peace in a way, make up for your mistakes and, do the right thing and be better and always grow. And it was almost like that weird, like they call it the cycle of abuse, but it's so real and it does look different for everyone. But I was like continuously in a circle of this is wrong, this is not okay. And then I wouldn't trust myself and I wouldn't trust that instinct and I wouldn't trust, what I would like believed in. And then I would just trust in someone else that they'd be a good person or like doing me a good deed is the repayment for, a negative experience from them. So yeah, it's weirdly ingrained in us to kind of like follow a pattern of like, that love-hate relationship kind of feel, like there's a pain and there can be some hate and there can be negativity, but there's love and there's like, that's what you should focus on. And I was saying today that one of the biggest things is I wish I listened to that gut instinct. I really wish I listened and believed that my word was valid and what I believed was right is right because that's what I need. And it may look different for someone else, but you need to listen to those. This is what I think that love should be, and I should be able to have a voice for it. But we do get silenced, and I think that pressure that's been like surrounded by us, you subconsciously, it affects you in those situations because we've been conditioned to feel or think a certain way.
It just sounds like what you were describing, that whole push and pull and how we've, like you said, been conditioned to, make up for mistakes. But at the same time, when you're in that situation, it sounds like that confliction between someone making up for mistakes, it sounds like ultimately just blinds your judgment a little bit.
Yeah, it does. And I use this word, I keep saying respectfully, but crazy. I felt crazy because I thought I knew what was right. And there was that part of me deep down that knew what was right. And I knew that I had to stand up for myself or, the situation and, the typically like get out, like you shouldn't be with someone who treats you like this. But yeah, there's just something that the fear and the control and the unknown hovers over you and you just get trapped and you get trapped within yourself.
I feel like those statements in particular, the get out and the feelings of being trapped is the perfect segue into what I was going to ask next is that typically when people know a very limited amount about domestic violence and are very quick to judge, one of the first things people will say is, why don't you just leave?
Yeah,
and it's never that simple.
And it's not. And I go back to the word crazy, because moments I go, I know I should just leave. I know I should have gotten out. Like, I know I can't be here right now. I know that was wrong. But I don't even have the words to describe why I didn't, like I don't have it was the feeling, it was the fear, and that, what ifs. And also, which I think is very important to acknowledge though, like I was in a relationship and I was in love and it was real for me. So it wasn't just like this DV situation where I was, being abused 24/7. There were some beautiful parts to my relationship that I showed up for. I was there, I was experiencing. And it goes back to that cycle of abuse where it starts off amazing and then it gets hard and then it gets, pretty horrific for some people, or, intense. And then something drastic can happen, or you can get hurt physically, emotionally, mentally, whatever it is that really low point in that circle. And then it slowly builds all the way back up to that happy place and that love and that care. And it just continues. It goes round and round and round. And then you naturally want to get back to that happy place. So, like, okay, the fear and everything, I just know at some point it's going to be okay. In 30 seconds, it can be okay. In 2 days, it can be okay. And then that can last for months. It can last for a day. It can last for a couple of years. Like, everyone's different. But yeah, that typical get out, why didn't you just leave kind of attitude. I wish it was that simple for people. And I wish I could explain in a simple way why people don't do that. And some people have. Some people can have that moment where they just go, or like they say, no, enough is enough. But not everyone is, in a position to do that.
It seems to me, from what you just said, that people tend to look at domestic violence situations as black and white. They
Yes.
don't look at the nuance of all the grey areas that are there. And I think it could be because when people are presented with an uncomfortable situation, they want to find it's a right or a wrong.
Yes.
They don't want to look at all the degrees in between.
Yes. Yeah, and I think it's because it's so different for each situation. That's why we say it's not as simple either. And majority of the time with a perpetrator, you don't know that they're actually a violent person or an abusive person. So from the outside, just seeing someone, like a lot of people will be like, oh, like, what is she talking about? Or what is he talking about? Like they look happy. They're fine. Or then you'll hear something, hard to, talk about, and people go like, oh, well then the logic would be just to leave, right? The logic would be just to like dump them or move on. Or the logic would be to go to the police or tell someone. And I think people are very quick to question or to kind of shy away from doing anything, because I go back to that unknown part. Like, well, will I get hurt if I help them? Or, how will that look on me if I got myself involved? Or do I want to get myself involved? And, oh, well, if they didn't reach out to me, then I shouldn't do something. But yeah, I think you put it perfectly. Like, it's that black and white that people quick to judge, quick to go to. And that's where that simplicity from the outside point of view gets in. Yeah, it's really interesting. It's really a good way to put it.
I also think what happens is maybe people look at it and go, oh, yeah, but people argue.
Yeah.
Right. And I get that. People do argue. There's always differences of opinion. And some of the opinions, are very closely held for some people. But it's not that. It's something very different.
Yeah, and that's like that kind of thing when I say that, that demographic, that people are just arguing, they're having a fight, like no worries kind of thing. That's just what they do. Like, so we're quick to stereotype and we're quick to kind of put judgment on people in, a situation that you might not experience, or you may, argue with your partner or your friend or your family and go like, oh, they're just having a disagreement kind of thing, and which happens. But I think there's so many underlying things that people miss or don't know of. And I respect that from people. I know that no one knew that I was in, pain or in a situation where I couldn't get out of until cracks started to show or I reached out. And you feel alone for a very long time. And that's why I don't put expectations on people, as I said before, to understand what I went through, because some people had no idea. And that's like that other thing, like it's black and white, but how are people supposed to know sometimes?
Yeah, especially if it's not, like you said, there's no obvious superficial signs on the outside. There's no dramatic change of behavior. Like you said before, if you started to withdraw, you were still in contact with people, but not share as much as you were sharing before. So if you weren't sharing anything, then others wouldn't have anything to judge, to base off that something was really going on.
Yeah.
In a sense. But the whole black and white thing, like there's so many variables for some people in that situation where they can't just up and leave. I mean, I've heard of some stories for people who have gotten to a point where, their finances are controlled. Progressively over time, their main friendships and their relationships with their family and stuff have dissolved because that's been controlled part of their life. So, and obviously, if there's kids and stuff involved as well. So for someone in that situation to just up and leave and get out, leave, as people are so quick to say, like where are they going? What resources do they have?
Yeah.
Like that's just as much of a risk for them to leave that situation with potentially no finances, no social, emotional support. Like, who do they turn to? What do they do? It's a very dramatic decision that, people will think, well, if I stay and risk it, I've still got some securities, but if I leave, I've got nothing.
Exactly. And I think, sharing some of my story is I was in a position where, I had a family that loved me and loved me unconditionally and would do anything for me. But I was in the mental state of embarrassment and, being pregnant towards the end of that, I didn't know how to go home. So that was running through my head going, will they accept me when, with the baggage that I'm bringing home, am I going to be able to come home and say, I've got nothing left. I've got no money. All it is me, my unborn child, and my car. I'm not a basketballer anymore. Like, what are they going to think of me? What are my friends going to think of me? How am I going to come from being a professional athlete to what my ex used to call me, like a washed up single mum? That was embedded in my head, and that mental and emotional state that I was in, I believed that, so the narrative that he told me and dictated my life to be was what I was living in a way. So it's, even when I went to the police and I was moving forward and I took that next step, I was still trying to figure out, okay, what do I have from here? How do I completely let go of that relationship too? How do I completely let go of that situation and, trust that the next step is the right step, kind of thing. So for people, it's not as easy as just like going, yep, someone help me, or I'm reaching out for help now. All right, that's the answer to all my problems. It's so much more than that. And unfortunately for people, it can not just be that financial, but it can be emotionally and mentally too, that people take a long time to heal and take a long time to even work through court processes. As you said, if there's kids or even just, sentencings and all that kind of stuff, it's like once you reach for help, it's still an uphill slog to finally get to the end, and there may never be an end.
And so you had a lot of people, well, you had some key people in your support services that helped you navigate the ordeal initially. Are you able to share what that looked like for you? Like, what was your next step?
And I love to be transparent with my story and to be as real as possible. So when I reached out for help, it was my family first, but it wasn't the first step to let go of everything, as I was saying. And I still struggled a lot with, thinking that I was doing the wrong thing, even by reaching out. My mum helped me call the police, which was my next point of call. And even then, when I was, reporting to the police, I felt like I was doing something wrong. I was putting someone in jail potentially. I was, telling on someone that I was in a relationship with, like, do I love that person? No, I don't love that person. And, you go back in this mental swirl. And then I was like, okay, I need to talk to someone who's non-biased, so not my family and not the police. So I reached out to DVCS, which is the Domestic Violence Crisis Service. And I remember calling up a couple of times, and every time someone answered the phone, I'd hang up. And because I was like, okay, I'm doing the wrong thing. And I was like, no, I can just call back. I don't have to say anything. But yeah, just to have someone on the other end of the line to just talk to, and I could share whatever I needed to share at that point in time or ask for help, was amazing. And, they have extended parts to their services that they can help you in nearly every area that you need. And I had no idea. They can help you with lawyers. They can help you with finance. They can help you with pointing you in the right direction to some pilot teams who are teams that are behind you and making sure that your situation is heard in a courtroom and you're supported in everything that you have to go through. They provide people to be with you in courtrooms, or if you have to speak to a police, if you have to create a statement, they can talk on behalf of you. So yeah, there's a lot of the services out there that are like clinical are actually like lifesavers. I'm a big fan of them. Especially for the people who might not have the family that I had, or who might not have the confidence to go to the police. But I think a lot of stuff that helped me move forward was being, it's kind of hard, and I know it's hard for a lot of victims to hear, but you've got to take the step too. Like, you have to meet people halfway. You have to have the courage to find your way out as well. And it's not going to be easy, and it's not a smooth process, but if you can't reach out for help, or you can't at least be willing to allow help, there are a lot of times where people's hands are tied. People can't help you if they don't know. People can't help you if you don't say something. So yeah, it's definitely a process.
So let me ask, in relation to the upcoming round, what have you and the club organised in terms of things happening to raise awareness, raise funds, etc., on the evening and the run up to the game?
So we've made a mini doco that's going to be coming out, which is amazing. It's going to be shown hopefully at halftime during the game, just a small ad part of it. And we've included kind of the real message that I've wanted to get across, but also the people around me, to show that it's a collective effort for this, and the collective effort for this round, and a collective effort for not making this tokenistic, and really having this is just the beginning kind of feel. And the Caps have been great. They kind of gave me the full reign of organising everything, and just respectfully giving me, just the space to be able to have ideas. And, Simon with MVP Media, who's our media guy, he was just 100% on board helping with anything that we needed. And he's filmed, snippets for this week to be able to just post on socials. We've made shirts that with our team on it, saying we've got your back, and we're not going to, I don't think we're making any profit off them. I think it's just the players are going to be wearing them, and we're encouraging everyone at the game to wear purple to show awareness. And the Caps have done a good job, because it's not this round to profit for us. It's a round to raise money if people want to, and they can donate to DVCS. And I've asked DVCS to come to the game, to any of the organisation who want to be at the game present. I'd love for them to be there, and they're going to set up a stall at the front with information and just be there for people, and just to give out a conversation for people, to give out advice, even just to be there for support. You never know if someone's going to reach out. And so their presence at the game is going to be huge, and then people can choose to donate directly to them, because I want it to be like that. I want people to have a free choice, and you can show your support in any way you need. And sometimes it's not always about money. So, just someone's presence, or someone's, wearing a purple shirt, that's going to be amazing. Or wearing something purple. There's going to be the AFP, the Family Violence Unit, are going to come to the game as well, in uniform, and they're going to just show their support. And I think it's really important to be in uniform and to show up like that, to kind of desensitize the authority feeling, and show they're here to help, they're here to support, because there are people who are part of the police who it's their job to help people in DV and family violence. And yeah, we're just kind of encouraging around the league for people to wear purple. And I really wanted it to be about the community as well. So that's that free of choice, wear purple, do this, and show up and donate if you want. And that encourages people to realize you have a say with what you want to do within yourself, and start the conversation. And we've also got scrunchies that I haven't shown the girls yet, which is a surprise. So if they're going to listen to this, surprise. From Scrunchico, who have given scrunchies to the Opals and stuff. And I know she works with some of the AFL women's teams. But we got I just reached out to her and just said if she wanted to help out, and she sent me some scrunchies which the girls can wear. But yeah, just to show awareness, like purple's the color at the moment. And I know that she was thinking of selling them on her website, and whatever profit she makes, she'll donate. So yeah, there's just a lot of little things, and also I think it's going to be a big impact. So yeah, and I know that some people are still going to wear the OG Bunts shirts. I know that's happening. But
Us
also,
included.
yeah, and also a little birdie told me we were trying to get Black Mountain Tower lit up purple, but that couldn't happen. So I think they're trying to do the light rail, or Canberra in general are trying to like show support, which I think is amazing. Like that's just like, I was speechless when I heard that. I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, this is great. I was like, this is like women in sport are like really making their mark on things. I'm so proud of us.
Yeah, that's fantastic. If you can get a public transport or something really like physically out in Civic or in the Canberra community past the National Convention Centre as representation, that's huge.
Yeah, so the little things is just like what's creating that big effect. And, you know, even you guys showing support, like it's just, this is what we need to, with any awareness or any subject that we bring up, you know, to show the care and the genuine appreciation for like us players and, you know, subjects like this. Like it's amazing. I'm so grateful.
Bunts, it's been great having you back on the show. It's been too long.
It has.
But we are looking forward to this round. We're looking forward to seeing you guys play. We're looking forward to seeing Canberra lit up in purple.
Mm-hmm.
If there's any politicians listening, Parliament House in purple would be awesome.
Didn't even think of that. Yeah. Come on, Canberra.
And anything that we can do to help you and support you in this, let us know.
Yeah, well, just you guys doing this is massive, you know, just a conversation, and that just helps continue the conversation, because you never know who this is going to reach. You never know who's going to click on and say, do you know what, I want to listen to this today. And they may help the next person on. They may pass it on to someone who needs it. And as I said at the beginning, I think that's the beauty of conversation. Someone can listen, someone can contribute, someone can pass it on, someone, you know, can grow. But yeah, you guys are doing amazing things for me and for us female athletes. So yeah, thanks guys.
And thank you so much for being so open and honest, letting us in as well, especially for this episode, given it's a sensitive topic. It's a lived experience for you, but hopefully we've helped you get a little bit closer to destigmatizing victims of domestic violence through this conversation. So we really appreciate you letting us into your story so intimately.
Yeah, of course, guys. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Bunts. And anyone who's listening, please support this round as any way you can. And even if you aren't at the game, wear purple.
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay, thanks, Bunts.
Thanks, guys.
Shooting the Breeze can be found on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Don't forget to subscribe and share the podcast with all your friends.